This meeting is being held in conformance with the Sunshine Law. Notice of time, date, and place has been furnished to the Bergen Record and the Ridgewood News. Notice has also been posted on the bulletin board of the Administration Building. Would the clerk kindly take the roll?
Mayor Giordano.
Here.
Ms. Saracola. Mr. Ritchie.
Here.
Mr. Schatz.
Here.
Mr. Shalero.
Here.
Mrs. Sherman.
Here.
Mrs. Weber.
Here.
Everyone kindly rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us have a moment of silence for all our Waldeck veterans and all veterans across our country who have given the ultimate sacrifice to keep us free so we can assemble the way we are tonight. Would the clerk kindly do the prayer?
Dear Lord, we start this meeting asking for your guidance and wisdom. May we find unity and fairness, the outcome to reflect our wishes to assist the borough in all their endeavors. Thank you in his name. Amen.
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 Tonight, we do not have any proclamations or presentations, so we'll get right to the mayor's report and the report of the committees. Under my report, just a couple of items. Last Saturday, we had our mayor's meeting. 14 mayors make up a Northwest Bergen Mayors Association, and we held a meeting, and at that meeting, we brought in our county executive, Mr. Tedesco, to talk to us. It was a very good meeting. He talked to us about everything from garbage, that is a big concern, to water, which is a bigger concern, and shared services and things of that nature. Our next meeting will be held in March, and at that time, we are going to bring in the director of the shared services so that he could explain to us how municipalities can work with each other with shared services to save some money. Every town is kind of hurting this year with their budgets, and their ideas might help a lot of the communities work with each other. Also, tomorrow I'll be attending the Chamber of Commerce meeting with Kelly L. Clerk. We are going there to present something to the Chamber of Commerce, an idea that we've been having for a long time. In the beginning of the year, or even at the end of last year, we talked about the new banners that are going to be put up on the poles, which can be purchased by veterans. And we just spoke with the Gates Flag Company. Everything is set. So what we're going to do is we're going to let the Chamber of Commerce know what we're doing first, because they are our chamber and they are working with us. And then from there, we will announce it to the public when they will go on sale. There's requirements that you have to follow, and it's going to be on a first-come, first-served basis. Unfortunately, we cannot put these banners on every pole. We're restricted on what we do on the poles. Also, on March 14th at our council meeting here, we are going to bring in the ambulance corps and the police department. Each organization has done a very good job, went above and beyond in different events that took place in our community, and we're going to thank them and give them certificates of recognition, recognizing them for what they have done in certain areas in Waldwick. And that's all I have to report. Financial Administrative Committee, Mr. Shalero.
Thank you, Mayor. This time of year, it's all about budget preparation, and the governing body, the mayor and council, with our staff, have had 2 budget meetings so far, on a Saturday and a Tuesday where we didn't have a mayor and council meeting. So we've spent a lot of time reviewing the budget for 2023. We still have work to do, and we're going to be hopefully moving along because our timeline is to finish our discussions on the budget and to come up with a final presentation to be able to introduce the budget on March 14th. But there are a lot of things that have to happen between when we finish the budget and when it's introduced. We have to prepare certain budget documents according to state requirements. The numbers have to be reviewed by our auditor. So there's a number of things that go into concluding our work and introducing it to the public. So when we finish our normal agenda tonight, we'll be staying to continue the discussion that we've had ongoing. So we're making good progress, and it's looking pretty good, and we'll have more to report at our next meeting.
Fire and Police Protection Committee, Councilman Saracola.
Thank you. So beginning with the fire department, they ended January with 11 calls for service. 3 of those were mutual aid requests, including 1 house fire. Drills this month consisted of annual mask fit testing, in-house fast team refresher, annual rope inventory and inspection, as well as an equipment maintenance night. The police department, we do not have a report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Councilwoman Sherman.
Thank you. The WALVAC report for the month of January, 43 calls were answered by 20 members total. 36 calls. On 36 of the calls, the units arrived on scene in less than 5 minutes. 6 calls, the unit arrived in 5 to 10 minutes, and 1 call, the unit arrived in 10 to 15 minutes. The ages of the patients range from under 1 to 99 years old. They responded to 2 mutual aid calls, 1 in Franklin Lakes and 1 in Ho-Hocus. They took patients to 2 times to Pascack Valley Hackensack Meridian, 3 times to Hackensack University Medical Center, 2 to Newbridge Medical Center, and 30 times to Valley Hospital. Total 43 calls by our ambulance corps. I will be attending their general meeting on February 20th, and I'll have more to report on that at the next council meeting, and I'll have more under new business. Thank you.
Thank you. Recreation and Health Committee, Councilwoman Weber.
Thank you, Mayor. So in regards to the parks, not too much going on. They look they're very clean and tidy thanks to the DPW, and they've been getting a lot of use the last few days with the warm weather. The Board of Health, the next meeting is going to be on March 16th, which I'll be able to attend. And just a reminder that there's a free rabies clinic tomorrow evening, but it's in Ho-Hocus at the Ho-Hocus School parking lot at 70 Lloyd Road. The licenses for the dogs for Waldock have to be done by March 1st in order to avoid the late fee. I don't know if anybody is big with the social media, but the Northwest Bergen Regional Health, they use social media quite often, and February is Heart Month. They've had quite a few ideas on there about eating better, being more active, and quitting tobacco. And I just might find the information very helpful. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public Works Committee, Councilman Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone in the public and to my colleagues up here. The remarkably warm weather we've had here this year has created a kind of a different winter for the Public Works Department. I was joking with Stan that that's the likely result of me finally buying a snowblower for the first time, so no snow for at least the next 5 years. But it's allowed the Public Works Department to do things in the winter that they typically don't. Things like twisting valves. I was speaking to the superintendent where they're actually replacing valves, which in the winter they tend to kind of stay away from given the freezing water. So that is interesting, and what the superintendent said is a lot of these valves probably it's the first time they've been replaced since they've been put in. So doing things like that, they're starting to do some not preventative maintenance, but maintenance on trucks getting ready for spring, which is again abnormal. They're usually out plowing, salting, doing that quite a lot. They had a chance to have the environmental section of the JIF, I think it was, come in to do an inspection, and that went well. Catch basin work. I think the superintendent said that they haven't done catch basin work in the winter, and as far back as he can remember. So, that being said, if it does snow, just remember to keep your cars off the roads. That's my report this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Building and Grounds Committee, Councilman Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Buildings and Grounds, basically the parking lot is finished for now because of the winter weather. The only things left to do are the landscaping and the rain garden and the top coat, which will be done in the springtime. The other things that are being done on this particular building, as you can see, they're starting to put sheetrocking back into the onto the walls, and they anticipate finishing by the end of March. I also I can't attend the environmental meeting. However, it's going to be held on February 15th. They have set up a composting seminar, which is going to happen on March 9th at 7 p.m. at the library, and they'll be notifying everybody of that. Next thing, the planning board meeting they had was February 1st, and they had two no resolutions resolved, and then they had two site applications, one at 152 Franklin Turnpike for a personal training and health wellness store, another one at 62 Franklin Turnpike for a hair salon. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Borough Administrator Patrick.
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Borough Clerk Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Elected officials training, I know I sent that out to everybody, and we had to cancel. There was a conflict with Frank, so we're rescheduling that meeting for Tuesday, April the 11th, which is our normal council meeting at 6 p.m. And just to remind you that the borough receives a $250 credit per council member who attends. So I just ask if you cannot attend to please let me know. Tatiana and I will be attending the Bergen County Election Officials Training next Friday. I guess we'll get a better idea of what's happening this year with elections, what machines we'll be using, and how that's going to go down. Finally, I'll be attending the Municipal Clerks Association of New Jersey Conference from March 20th to the 23rd. Classes include Daniel's Law, First Amendment audits, record management, Oprah, the New Jersey League of Municipalities legislative update, and as well as our annual meeting. So I'm looking forward to. I haven't gone in quite some time, so I'm looking forward to going to that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant Administrator Matt.
No report tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Our Borough Attorney Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. No report.
Are we going into close or anything?
No items for close.
Okay. Consent resolutions and resolutions of the governing body.
Be it resolved that the following resolutions herewith listed by consent, having been considered by the governing body of the Borough of Waldwick, are hereby passed and approved. 2023-86, approval of consent. 2023-87, approval of minutes, regular meeting, January 24th, 2023, and special meeting, February 4th, 2023. Policy votes. A, Waldwick Chamber of Commerce requests to hang the Waldwick 5K banner on the fence located at the end of East Prospect Street beginning April 1st, 2023. B, Waldwick Chamber of Commerce requests the assistance of the police, DPW, CERT, fire department with the Chamber of Commerce 5K run and 1 mile walk on Sunday, May 7th. C, Waldwick High School requests the use of the municipal pool on June 12th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the senior class barbecue with a rain date of June 13th with lifeguard staff requested. D, the class activity parents of Trapegan and Crescent request to use the municipal pool on June 15th from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the 5th grade splash party with lifeguard staff requested. E, Mark Goodell requests to use Pavilion B on July 15th from 1 p.m. to dusk for a remembrance gathering with alcoholic beverages being served. F, the Waldwick Fire Department requests to use Pavilions A and B on June 17th from 9 a.m. to dusk for a party honoring Tom Pinkham with alcoholic beverages being served. 2023-88, authorizing renewal of group dental benefits program for eligible employees and their covered dependents through the Delta Dental of New Jersey Incorporated. 2023-89, award a non-fair and open-ended contract with RF Reveille Construction Corp. in an amount not to exceed $30,000. 2023-90, award a non-fair and open-ended contract with Core and Main LP in an amount not to exceed $40,000. 2023-91, award a non-fair and open-ended professional service contract with H2M Architects and Engineers for hydrogeological and compliance services in the amount of $25,000. 2023-92, award a non-fair and open contract with CMC Rescue for firefighter bailout systems in the amount of $18,000. 2023-93, approving the transfer of junk title to All Points Automotive and Towing. 2023-94, authorize Midland Park Continuing Education Summer Camp to use the Waldwick Municipal Pool for their campers. 2023-95, approval of termination and retirement of William Schmidt. 2023-96, cancellation and refund of taxes, Block 35, Lot 77. 2023-97, authorize Colleen Ennis, CFO, to maintain a petty cash fund in the amount of $400. 2023-98, authorize cancellation of a funded bond ordinance appropriation. 2023-99, cancellation of tax sale certificate 2022-00629, and refund of purchase funds. 2023-99, tax overpayment various 2023-100, redemption of tax title lien 22-00628, 2023-101, payment of vouchers.
We have a motion and a second to accept. Motion by Don, second by Paul. On the question, anyone?
I have to recuse myself from the minutes. I was not at the last meeting.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention on 2023-98, cancelizing a bond ordinance appropriation. This pertains to the project we did at Ted Bell Park. This was a combination of grants and matching funds from the borough to basically rehabilitate the entire park. Fortunately, the project came in under budget, so we could take the rest of the money that was not needed for the project and return it to our capital fund. And that's what this does.
Anyone else? 2023-94, is that the camp that was here last year? That's coming back into Walden? From Millen Park?
Yes.
And we're doing everything like we did for them last year.
The only difference is they asked for an additional day this year. So last year they were here once a week. This year they had asked for twice a week. Part of the reason is last year the weather was such that they had to cancel the majority of their sessions, and they were hoping with 2 times a week they could get, knowing that some are going to be canceled due to rain, they can get some more time.
And pool director's all right with this?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Clerk, please take the roll.
Ms. Sericola?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Adoption of ordinances with public hearings. Would the clerk kindly read ordinance number 2023-01?
Ordinance number 2023-01, an ordinance to create Chapter 35 Business Insurance Registry and requiring liability insurance and annual registration requirements for businesses and owners of a rental unit or units in the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Waldwick.
Anybody from the council would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we introduced this a couple of weeks ago. Essentially, this is being driven by changes in the state requirements, where the state is requiring that businesses now provide proof of insurance, and they're putting the onus on the municipality to document that. So any business or rental property that is going to be requiring a certificate of insurance with certain minimum limits, that they will have to report that and provide documentation to the municipality to prove that they carry the required insurance.
Anyone else? If not, I close the council's comments. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read? If none, I close the public's comments and ask for a motion and a second to pass this ordinance on second reading, and that the clerk be authorized to advertise it in local legal newspapers as required by law. Do I have a motion and a second? Motion by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Schatz. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ms. Sericola?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Would the clerk kindly read ordinance number 2023-02?
Ordinance number 2023-02, an ordinance amending Chapter 29 Alcoholic Beverages, Section 29-12, hours of operation, restricted to clarify restricted hours 7 days a week.
Anybody from the council would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read? What this one is saying is that on our records right now, we have certain hours in which we have to keep a business open, and we're changing it. We found out that it was meant for like a New Year's Eve or a New Year's Day. So what we're doing is we're changing the hours that you're open until like 10 p.m.,
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Right, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. So we're just amending it. We're just fine-tuning everything. Anyone else from the council? If not, I close the council's comments and ask anybody from the public that would like to comment on this ordinance that was just read. Yes. Wherever you feel comfortable.
Mr. Mayor, regarding that ordinance, I just happened to see it in the Berkeley record one day. It was January 30th. And it says here, the Borough of Walden below shows deletions to the code, strike through, additions, and underlines will follow. And then if you read down further, it wasn't printed properly. There was no strike through, there was nothing underlined. So I don't know how you, the council can pass this without Walden even knowing this or even seeing this, as, you know, Joe Citizen. It was printed wrong in paper, correct?
Well, we discussed this at our, we discussed this at our last meeting when we introduced it. So the public
But
knew
was
about
in
it
the
then.
paper the wrong way.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
So how can this, I mean, it's a great thing.
Yeah, he's looking
It
into
was
it.
wrong.
Hang on.
I just happened to see it like 4 o'clock in the morning, waiting for my dialysis.
So the notice is there that it's being changed, so, and it still gives the notice to the public that there's going to be a change to this ordinance. So if the public wanted to speak it, that they would have the notice to come here and speak.
I just did.
Like he did.
It's wrong.
So, trying to pull it up.
Doesn't make a difference on if the council votes on it or not tonight. If the council's comfortable doing so with the understanding that there may or may not have been the underlines and strike-throughs in the text of the ordinance as published. Does council want to vote? I guess.
But it's wrong.
So,
It's wrong.
yeah, so this was in the paper January 30th, so if people were interested in finding out what was missing, they could have contacted us for additional information. So there was opportunity for the public to learn more between then and February 14th. So I'm okay with it.
But it's wrong.
And the advice,
It's wrong. It's wrong.
thank you.
We're gonna let, I mean, God forbid it happens again, there's something more important to the town people of Walden.
Mhm.
I mean, we have a great council, mayor, everybody. I think it should be redone.
The advice of council is the council can vote on it if they choose to.
So if they approve it, it means then nothing for me to come up here and show you, say that it was wrong.
Do you have any substantive argument with the ordinance?
It's wrong.
No. With what is,
It was printed.
with the agenda
Yes, correct.
sitting there, do you have any comment regarding the substance of the ordinance? Not what was in the paper. Because the paper could have screwed up printing it, but that doesn't change the legal right of this council to adopt it this evening.
No, I mean, it's wrong. I don't know the rules with the alcoholic beverages. I'm not familiar with, you know, I know people who have licenses. I know establishments, yes.
It's
I
actually
mean, maybe they
making
didn't
it
see it,
easier for them.
maybe they did.
It actually is more generous for them.
This actually benefits any license holder, this ordinance.
Do we, can I ask a question? Do we gain anything by voting tonight versus on the 28th? Do we lose anything?
Mayor, if I may, only if there's an expectation that it be re-advertised. So if the council's interest is that we re-advertise it, then certainly there would be a benefit in the council not voting on it tonight because it would give the opportunity for the clerk to re-advertise it in the paper. If the council tonight is satisfied that while it wasn't printed in the paper correctly, but there was proper notice given to the public and any public was given the opportunity to come here tonight and speak, then then the council would be able to vote tonight. So it all depends on the comfort level of the council. If it benefits both the public here and the council, I can read through the ordinance as it exists today and as it is proposed to be amended.
It just feels like it's easier to just we should get the paper to give it to us for free since they printed it wrong, and we'll just revisit this on the 28th. That would be my recommendation. But we,
Yeah.
Well-
Do you have it up? Do you have it up there?
Does he have?
Well, we have,
Craig?
we're still talking with the public. We have the
Okay.
public, let them discuss this with us. We just had Eric talk to us. Anybody else from the public would like comment on this ordinance that was just read? Yes. Yeah, you know what, if you don't mind, if you could just come up and just state your name and address for us.
I just feel that having the correct information printed sets a precedent for future, so just
Fine.
communication.
Right. Thank you. And your name and address, I'm sorry.
It's Tiana Doctor, and I live at 56 Richard Drive.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I close the council's, the public's comments and ask for a motion and a second. But now we're going to vote on if we want to just not vote on it tonight and go to next meeting.
I mean,
We'll
it
have to
was
wait for Kelly.
pointed out.
I feel comfortable pushing it off and having it reprinted
Yep, me too.
in the spirit of transparency.
Yeah, it was pointed out to us that there was a legitimate error. I feel it won't hurt us to wait 2 weeks to approve it.
Yeah, I agree, unless there's a, I mean, is there a need, is there a business open until 5 a.m.? Okay, so then, yeah, let's just, I think it's easiest to wait until the 20th.
When Kelly comes up, she'll. Okay. Well, what we're going to do is go across the room to wait until the next meeting or not.
Okay. So they printed it with the changes. They did the work. That's what they did. Okay,
So you're doing, do a count on who's going to wait for the next meeting.
okay. Ms. Sarah,
Yeah, and republish it.
Ms. Saracola?
Yeah, we'll push it till next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero? Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have it
So I'll re-advertise and we'll put it on for 28th.
Yep.
Thank you. 28th.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
We have two introduction of ordinances. The first one is ordinance number 2023-03.
Did I put the wrong thing on this one? Did I print the wrong thing? Here it is. Sorry. Ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 91 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 16 Metered Parking, and Chapter 48 Fees, Section 91-12.2 Vehicles and Traffic, Parking Meter Fees.
A motion and a second is in order to move and pass this ordinance on first reading and that it be advertised in local legal newspapers as required by law, setting a public hearing 2 weeks from tonight's meeting at 7:30 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be reached. Do you have a motion and a second? Motion, Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Schatz. Anyone on the question?
Thank you, Mayor. So this ordinance is to make changes to the code that governs the 40 on-street metered parking spaces around the train station. Those spaces had previously been metered with physical meters at each space. We've moved to a pay-by-phone, pay-by-app system, and the meters have been removed. So this ordinance reflects the changes of the meters being removed and you now being required to pay by the phone or by the app. There are no changes to the number of spaces, the price we charge for payment, or anything else.
Anyone else? If not, clerk, take the roll.
Ms. Saracola?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Clerk, kindly read ordinance number 2023-04.
Ordinance number 2023-4, an ordinance amending Chapter 97 zoning, Article 9, Site Plan Review, Section 70, site plan approval required, and Section 71, site plan approval not required.
A motion and a second is in order to move and pass this ordinance on first reading and that it be advertised in local legal newspapers as required by law, setting a public hearing 2 weeks from tonight's meeting at 7:30 PM or soon thereafter as the matter may be reached. Do we have a motion and a second? Motion by Mr. Shalero, second by Mr. Schatz. On the question, what this is that Councilman Schatz and myself sit on the planning board, and from time to time, we have site tenant reviews coming in front of us, which means if someone wants to open up a business, they have to come in front of us, they have to get themselves a lawyer, and they have to present to us what they're opening up and all the requirements. 9 times out of 10, the questions that we ask are very simple, because if there's a restaurant that's here and then it goes out of business and a new restaurant comes in, it's really nothing you really should ask, because they're just moving their name into the building. So what we're doing is we are trying to be business-friendly with our community, and anyone that's going to come into our community to open up a business, instead of coming to the planning board, they will go to Joe Misulik, our building inspector. He will review all the applications. He will determine if it has to come to the planning board, and if it doesn't have to come to the planning board, it'll start and end with Joe, and he'll keep an eye on everything. That way, the businesses don't come into Waldwick and spend a lot of money, which you could spend up to $1,000 to $1,500 just to have an attorney come and sit here for 10 minutes and tell us where they want to open up a business. And Joe, after any site tenant review now is approved by the board, Joe has to speak with them anyway. So now you're bypassing us, you're going right to Joe, and Joe will take care of everything for us. His decision will be the one. The planning board does know about this. At the last meeting, I announced it to them. This is something that the administrator, the attorney, and myself, we've been talking about it for a while, so that we could just change the dynamics of the planning board for the better of the community. Anyone else?
So it might help for us to understand. So basically what we're saying is when someone's opening a new business, they have to do a site review for the permits. And what you're saying is that there's a cost to the business for that, but if it's the same type of business moving into the space, it's the same site, same purpose, so a site review is redundant and just adds cost?
Right, plus also, it might be that another business might be coming into that area, but it is up to Joe, who's the building inspector, to see if it has to come in front of the board eventually. He'll make the final decision.
It also, Mayor, if I can, it also adds a lot of time for a business to come into the borough.
Right.
Because you have leases that get entered into, and then by the time they file the application, so, hypothetically, let's say a business wants to come in February 1st. By the time they get their application filled out, they've missed the February meeting. Now they have to wait until the March meeting of the planning board, and then they could only, in theory, move April 1st. They've lost 2 months of fit up and trying to get into the borough. So it expedites the process if everything is met according to your code.
And it helps the new business coming into town. And, of course, we'll be protected because Joe will be overseeing all this, and he is aware of it, and he said that he has no problem doing this. Anyone else? Clerk, take the roll.
Ms. Saracola?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Mr. Shalero?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Weber?
Yes.
Okay, unfinished business, the 2023 municipal budget discussion. Don, if you would like to start that.
Thank you, Mayor. So during our last 2 budget meetings, the mayor and council and the staff have already put in about 10 hours worth of negotiations and discussions reviewing our budget. A couple of things have changed since our meeting on the operating budget side, but what I recommend, Mayor, is that we look at the capital portion first, because that seemed to be a little more clear-cut based on the work we did last week. And essentially, and anyone can speak up, correct me if I'm wrong, we left kind of 2 items up in the air, and all of the other items we had reviewed remain in the capital budget going forward. The first item that we left unresolved was the acquisition of property for a park. Right now, we're keeping that in the budget to determine if there is the possibility for acquisition for an additional park. And the second is the purchase of a new fire truck. Basically, we've asked for additional information. And at the present time, there's money remaining in the capital budget proposal for both those items. So I guess what I would ask, just to keep this moving forward, is were there any other items anyone else on the council had questions about that we needed to revisit or put on hold? Okay, just for, this is kind of preliminary still, but for the purposes of the public that weren't here, each year we, and we'll get into more detail when we get into public introduction, but each department submits capital requests to our administrator and CFO. They review that and prepare a proposal for us. During our capital budget meeting, we received presentations from the police department and from the fire department to get more information about some of the items in their proposal, and the mayor and council reviewed what was put before us. The two items in question, final decisions depend on what additional information is available to us before we can decide on those things, but for the time being, land acquisition for a park and purchasing a fire truck are still in the capital budget. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess until we get more information on those items, we're complete on the capital side. Okay.
Do we reach out yet to,
Thank you, Mayor. I did reach out to the president of HCA Park last week with a phone call and an email, but have not heard back yet. So I'm hopeful that we hear back from him this week, and I'll follow up near the end of the week if I have not heard back.
So on the operating budget side, there are a couple of challenges that the mayor and council face. Again, for the benefit of those that haven't been with us, there were certain items in our budget that saw significant increases, resulting in higher than normal increases in our overall budget. So we operate under certain rules that are required by the state. There's two sets of caps that we have to work within. One is a tax cap, one is an appropriation cap. So essentially, you can't just raise taxes as much as you want. You can't increase spending as much as you want. But in this case, there were certain items in our budget that were significant increases. For instance, our pension contribution to the state went up double digits. Our insurance for both property and casualty and health benefits went up significantly in double digits. Health benefits provided by the state went up 22%. Property and casualty insurance went up 10%. Our garbage contract was up for renewal. Our garbage contract was renewed with a 40% increase. Our sewer authority assessment had a significant increase. So these are items in our budget that we had to consider when putting the rest of our budget together. And what we found was we were about $153,000 over the state mandated cap. So between our last meeting and tonight, we were going to have to come back and revisit to make additional cuts to fall within that cap. Plus, there were a couple of other items we wanted to add into the budget for new programs that actually increased that to $232,000. So since our last meeting, the Division of Local Government Services, which is part of the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, has given us some relief in providing the opportunity to take some of those items with significant cost increases out of the cap. So health benefits, the pension contribution, the garbage collection, workers' comp insurance, which went up about 11% this year. We're allowed to take all those things out of the cap. Before the meeting, Patrick let us know that that accounts for about $450,000 relief from the cap. So essentially, we could approve the budget as proposed and be under the cap. However, that is quite a bit of significant increases. So a couple of things that we wanted to do was look at some additional items to cut, and what the mayor and councils talked about was kind of hard to explain in just a couple minutes. So what we're trying to juggle is cutting expenses to the point where it would make it difficult in future years to meet budget obligations again. So we're kind of juggling caps on appropriation, caps on tax increases, utilizing surplus to balance the budget, and then the opportunity in the future to regenerate the surplus for future years' budgets. So taking all those things into consideration, we came up with a number of things that we could responsibly cut that provides a variety of cuts in expenses, cuts in future surplus use, and cuts in one escrow account, possibly escrow account. And another thing that I think we have to balance that against is whatever cost increases we see in the future, we also run the risk of running up against that appropriation cap again, because we don't know where future increases are going to be. So a couple of decisions we need to make here to kind of wrap up our work on the operating budget is what we do with this new information about the state taking some of these items out of the cap. And I'll tell you specifically what they are. Patrick provided that to us. Solid waste collection, recycling collection, the two different retirement funds, PERS and PFRS, gas and diesel, workers' comp, and health insurance. That amounts to $464,000. So you could see that that far exceeds what we need to accomplish in our cuts. However, I would still like us to consider making these cuts. So if you look at it like this, what we're saying is if we make these cuts, we're reducing our ability to regenerate surplus in the future. However, if we don't, we're going to be using that surplus now to pay for these items in the budget. So either way, there's an impact on our surplus. So I had emailed different members of the council on some ideas for some things that we could cut into a combination of things. And I kind of want to have a discussion and see if anyone has any comments or feedback on some of the things we talked about. So let's start with first the 3 items that were in question that were proposed for new programs to add back to the budget. It was the scanning and storage program, the police accreditation, and the high visibility jackets. So I had proposed incorporating those into the budget and therefore needing to meet the new budget cap cuts of $232,000. Anyone have any comments on that?
And we need to have our police department, know what's going on all the time, and, if they need help to get things done, because they're changing things so fast in this country or the state, we should, make sure that they have the right tools to do it.
Yeah, I think just for clarification, the police jackets they're wearing so much gear across their chest that they're reflective jackets, and jackets can't fit over, and they'd have to go out of pocket if they want to do this. So that and the accreditation makes sense. The scanning, I think we may want to wait until we hopefully get some relief in future years on some of these costs. If any of them stabilize, that might be something that I would recommend putting off for this year.
I also agree with that same situation. The only thing about just to add about the vests, I believe we were going to try and get some kind of grants to pay that off or get it through donations type of thing. So it might end up we'll put it in there, but we might be able to get it back.
So there is money in the police donations trust that we had proposed to use to offset the cost of the jackets. So jackets probably run about $12,000. The trust has about $7,000 in it. So we proposed using $6,000 of that to offset the cost of the jackets. We also had proposed charging the members of the department a certain amount for those jackets, because they would otherwise receive a uniform allowance each year for the purchase and upkeep of their equipment, and so it's reasonable that they put some money in towards this. But being as these are new purchases for everybody that they weren't required to make prior, We didn't want to saddle them with the whole cost of it. So in the budget, I would recommend, if you want to fund the jackets, you put in about $6,000, which will enable us to make that purchase.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Patrick, didn't all the officers purchase a winter jacket when they wore their vests under their uniform shirt? So all the officers already used their clothing allowance to buy a jacket that they could fit. And now they got assigned a new vest where the equipment is outside it, making their jackets unable to be worn. I can't see why the mayor and council would request them to buy a jacket again, even if it's a portion of it, when we are the ones who change their uniforms. You know, they have to buy their shirts every year, their pants every year, their boots every year. It just seems to me that they're already contributing $6,000 from their donations that they get. Did you say? What's the number?
That's what I'd propose.
I just think it's unfair to make them buy a second jacket when we were the ones who gave them new apparatus to wear, making their coats unable to be worn. Just an opinion.
It's kind of true, really. I mean, we're telling them, you know, we're giving you all this stuff to wear, and now we're telling you have to go out and buy a jacket. I think, you know, we have them, you know, we should give them the equipment that they need to do their job.
Mr. Mayor, are we requiring that they get this jacket? I mean, if we're requiring it, then I would think
They
we do.
can't wear the jackets they have, they can't move.
But are we requiring that they wear this, that they buy this jacket?
No.
No, we're not requiring it, which means that, you know, if it was like OSHA required equipment, employers are required to pay for the OSHA equipment, i.e. construction company requires you have to have steel-toe boots. Company's supposed to pay for those boots. That's required to wear. Whereas the jacket is not required to be worn. So we're putting $6,000 towards it. So if they want, maybe if you wanted to do that, if they wanted to buy it, then they would put the money towards it if they wanted to buy it. Otherwise, they don't have to buy it. They don't want to do it with money.
I still feel the other way. I mean, they're not getting a new jacket because they gained weight or anything. They're buying a new jacket for safety reasons because they need to be able to move around in this jacket when they have all this gear and everything they're wearing. I mean, that's just like.
And if they're outside for a car accident or something, you know, it was 0 degrees on Christmas, and if an officer's outside for 2 hours on a problem, what are they gonna do, freeze? Like,
So if I understand this, we're trying to decide if we're going to spend 6 or 12,000 here. Is that correct?
It would be less than that. The 12,000 is the total number, less 6,000 of donation money.
Okay.
And then there may be contributions in there as well from the officers. I mean, the final number, because we haven't decided on the final jacket, isn't specifically known. But
Okay.
the idea was to, or at least considered, was for a portion of it to come just from their clothing allowance. So not not technically out of pocket money,
But out of
but from their
clothing
clothing allowance.
And that
But you
would,
can still decide that that's not appropriate, you know, just, that was the idea.
so, but I just want to get a handle on the question. So we're deciding 6,000 or 0? Is that what we're deciding?
I would recommend you leave $6,000 in the budget. It may be a number, if you also decide that they will not contribute any money from their clothing allowance towards this purchase, it would stay at $6,000. If you recommend that, that they contribute something, the number will likely be less than $6,000, but again, it's just a budget number, so I would keep the $6,000 in there. So if you're to consider this, I would consider 2 things. 1, do you want to fund this? If so, we'll put $6,000 in the budget. 2, do you want the police officers to make any contribution from their uniform allowance? If you do, we'll handle that on our end. The $6,000 stays in the budget. Is that fair?
But the original 12,000 was to pay for everything.
Right.
Yeah, the 12,000 doesn't, is to pay for everything, yes. But the budget impact is only 6,000. You should be aware that we propose to take the other 6,000 out of the trust.
Got it.
Because nonetheless, it's still municipal
Okay.
money. But it's
Got it.
not, it's not municipal money that flows through the trust.
Okay, I'm okay with the 6,000.
And you want them to contribute?
No,
No.
6,000 come out of the fund that he's talking about,
Right.
and we fund 6,000.
Right, okay. So then they don't come up enough.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm confused with the clothing allowance. So it is coming out or it's not?
They're not going to pay.
But they're not really paying for it, right? If it's their allowance, the clothing allowance, right? Or a uniform allowance? So how does that work? Do they choose what uniform they want? Like, how does that work?
Police officers are given a uniform allowance each year for the maintenance and upkeep of their uniform. So they could buy shoes, they could buy undershirts, they could buy gear that they have to, work out in, qualify with. I've seen it used for purchase for watches that they're using, for pens that they're using. I mean, all things that they're using in the performance of their duty, they can spend this uniform allowance on. And they receive, I don't have the contract with me, but I want to say it's somewhere $800, our CFO is thankfully here, $800 they receive each year in a uniform allowance.
You all right with it?
Okay.
Okay.
So the next question, police accreditation. I say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so it seemed as though there was some question about scanning and storage. Now, perhaps, Patrick, you can remind us about what that was going into?
Yes, so we have a storage unit here, or storage area here on the second floor that has been filled with paperwork, files, and we're looking to move that, to do two things with that. Either part of it will be moved off-site for storage, and part of it will be gone through and shredded because they're files that are no longer required to be kept. We want to clear that room out of paper for two reasons. One, it's a lot of weight on the floor, and we have to be careful that we don't overload that room with paperwork because obviously it wasn't designed for heavy paper file storage. Two, there is a discussion for that room to be used in another purpose, potentially office space, and it's something that the council's previously supported in offering it by lease to the Northwest Bergen Regional Health Commission. And that's something that we've discussed with the Health Commission that they are supportive of, at least in this stage of the conversation. So clearing that room would serve those two purposes, alleviating the weight and allowing space for Northwest Bergen.
So 40,000 is the number proposed. Could we start with a smaller amount this year, or is it like 40,000 or nothing?
Well, we would do as much as we can with whatever funds you provide to us, but I think that if you're going to undertake this project and you want to clear that space and make all of it available for Northwest Bergen or any other use, it wouldn't help to do it piecemeal because what's going to happen is once that room's cleaned out, we're going to have to fit it out. So you're talking air conditioning, drop ceiling, new carpeting. So to do that to half the room and then maybe clear out the other half in another year and then do more work in the next year, that may not make as much sense logistically, and it also wouldn't provide as much space for Northwest Bergen, and I know that it would benefit them and the lease if we could provide them as much room as possible.
Okay. Well, I'm okay with moving forward on that, but and I'm okay for the 40,000 because I think we can do that. But some people had additional questions.
I have a note here. I was jotting notes everywhere after the last meeting. 25,000, JIF will offset that cost?
That's the police accreditation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay. You just off by one half a line.
Sorry about that. Wasn't the weight of the files in that room a danger at this point? I thought it wasn't structurally sound to support that weight.
I wouldn't say it's
So-
a danger at this point. I would say that the room wasn't designed to hold the weight that's currently in there. We've had our We've had people look at it, and there's no imminent threat, but nonetheless, you understand that long.
Okay, and then what would be the rent that would be paid by the Northwest Bergen approximately? Like, would we see this money, this 40,000 in a few years perhaps in rent?
Yeah, I think it would be comparable to the rent that they're currently paying, because it will be comparable space, and they are paying, I don't have the exact number, but they're paying between $20,000 and $30,000 a year, I believe, in rent. And we wouldn't tie our number to their number, but both of them are set basically off of what is the market rent for this type of office space. And so I had worked with the tax assessor to look at, that square footage, what would it be per square foot? And it equated to more or less what they're paying now, right? For that obvious reason, it's both office space and it's both going at the market rent. I think that to our benefit, it would be that, one, we don't have a use for that space now, and so we could potentially charge rent far in excess of what we'd have to pay to store files elsewhere. And two, you take what is basically a municipal function in Northwest Bergen Regional Health Commission, and you move that into a municipal building. Now, we have plenty of people who come here looking for marriage certificates, birth certificates, and we say, cross the road and down the block and, make a left into a storefront. I think there is an advantage that at least I see in having that municipal function be here in a municipal building.
Okay, I'm comfortable
And
moving
again,
forward.
this is still preliminary in that Northwest Bergen, we don't have a lease with them or anything, but we're both working towards, at this point, the same goal of providing them that space should everything line up.
Okay, I like it.
So I think it's a wonderful idea, but without a lease, I'm just not comfortable spending $40,000 with the budget the way that it is right now. I mean, unfortunately, we have to make cuts. And if we're going to spend $40,000, I'd like to know that at least there's someone who's signed on the dotted line that they're going to move in, and we know what the revenue is going to be. I'd hate to be here a year from now with, where we spent the $40,000 and that room is sitting empty.
The room sitting empty would still be an advantage over where it is now in that it's a room not designed for heavy paper file storage. So that's the difficulty. This serves two benefits. But
Understood, but it sounds like unless an engineer has told us that that is going to collapse, it's a nice to have, not a need to have right now. And if we can generate rent revenue from it, I'm all for it. But it's speculative right now.
yeah, I can share with you the engineer report, which we have one by a structural engineer. It didn't say that it's going to collapse right now, but I'll share with you and you can draw your own conclusion.
Well, I also think another value of digitizing our records is it makes them easier to store and easier to access.
So I think Councilman Ritchie kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think this is a nice to have. I think it's a nice goal to continue to look forward to, but we need to be frugal with this budget. We need to be conservative. This is not our money to spend. I don't think we need this right now. In my own house, I can't buy the things that I want, so that's the approach that I'm taking here.
Don said, leave it.
Yes.
Paul,
I'm going to say leave it.
leave it. Katie, get rid of it. Leave it. Get rid of it.
Leave it.
We're leaving it.
Okay,
Say-
so that leaves, on the expense side, that kind of wraps up our discussions. So now we look at the areas to be cut. So some of the areas we talked about cutting, and I'm just going to go through this, and then we can go back and look at them. And again, based on the state waiving the cap for certain items, we don't have to do this, but I think it's the prudent thing to do. So we talked about cutting a couple of things. We were increasing the expense on the calendar, so now we're suggesting rolling that back. That would save $3,000. We have been increasing our concert budget in recent years. We're talking about rolling that back and cutting $5,000. We have been budgeting for archived social media, and we were checking to see if we can cut this for an amount of $6,250. What the archived social media is any borough-affiliated social media site, the platforms only keep the data for a certain amount of time. And in the interest of being able to have more access to that data for a longer period of time, we've been paying to archive it, and we've decided that we don't need to do that. We haven't been tapping into it, and it's not required by OPA regulations that we do that. So we can cut that out of the budget by $6,250. We had talked about discontinuing the printing and mailing of the spring and fall updates, but I think that is one area that we might want to consider keeping. It was $1,500, so I would suggest keeping that, not cutting it. OEM, we were increasing that budget to $2,500, so we're talking about rolling that back to $1,500 and cutting $1,000. One of the items where we were proposing cutting was our salt budget for $50,000, and just in case that makes anyone nervous, it's not going to result in a snowstorm tomorrow. We're not jinxing anything. What we are able to do is any unspent funds from prior years on this line item we can put in an escrow account, and we have built up an escrow account in this line budget. So by reducing our salt expenditure by $50,000 doesn't really put us at risk. We've had an escrow fund, sort of an escrow fund for leaf disposal and grass disposal because we get that done for free. So we could cut $35,000 there. We feel like we've over budgeted electricity by $10,000. Our medical by $30,000. We could suspend hydro raking for a year for $20,000. We can cut community TV by $1,000. DPW overtime by $40,000. Legal appeals by $17,500. Reserve for tax appeals by $15,000. We have a vacancy in our DPW. We can postpone filling that vacancy to October 1st at a savings of $19,000. So overall, with these cuts, we wind up with, because I've crossed some things out and added things back, about $245,000 in cuts, which exceeds our goal by about $20,000.
And we're definitely keeping the spring and fall update.
That is what I would propose.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I think it's wonderful. A lot of work was done, put into that. I think that that's the right list, and I just commend, you and whoever put the work into defining that.
Anyone else want to discuss or have any plans or ideas? Good, Don.
Okay, so we'll keep the spring fall updates.
Yes.
Sorry, Kelly. And Patrick, you have the rest of that list?
Yeah.
And the calendar's going to be like it is now.
Calendar will remain as is.
Okay. Okay. Everybody all right with this?
So I would just ask if Paul and Colleen, if you could update the spreadsheets and either email them out or something.
Yes.
What did I say? Paul.
Yeah,
I said Paul.
I'm sure.
Paul,
Paul, you got
update those spreadsheets.
You got a promotion, Paul.
I have Paul written here. That's why I said Paul. I was reading it.
We can have the budget updated and circulated by the end of this week. Yeah. The only other thing that you hadn't mentioned that I want to make sure you at least consider is roads. So I had shared with the mayor and council the list of roads that were slated for repaving this year. The municipal portion is $400,000 plus what we are doing with CDBG money and DOT money. So, you take a look at that list, and I had also sent you the next couple on the list. So if you take a ride down those roads, if you feel, we're doing a little too much, maybe the last two on the go list is not necessary, or maybe you look at the ones that fell off the list and you say, maybe we should put in $450,000. All those budget numbers are in there. So take a look at that and let me know if that's a number you want to change.
So one of the things that I think we need to add to that discussion is, we're talking about budgeting $900,000 in capital to pave roads, but we also talked about that is like the normal amount of roads we need to pace to repave our roads on a 20-year cycle. So I looked at the roads, I looked at the budget. We're getting some matching grants from the state, so I was okay with it.
That was a big topic at the mayor's meeting with his roads. Jessica was saying that that's why he never got back to us. They don't have the money to really do all the roads they're trying to do, and that's the county. Yeah, we talked about striping with him, and he says, we're trying our hardest to get everybody happy, but it's not working. And it's all asphalt, the price went skyrocketed. Okay, so we're all right with this? Good? Okay. Now we're gonna go into new business. Hiring of building maintenance employee.
Our building maintenance employee has notified us that he will be retiring, so this is a request from the mayor and council to advertise for the position.
When is he retiring?
His day is April 1st.
Okay.
April 1st, that's right. Yeah, so we'll want to get that started in the next week or two, put out an advertisement.
Okay. Everybody all right with that one? Okay. Any other new business from the council?
Thank you. I was invited to be a judge at the Girl Scout Pinewood Derby on Saturday, February 4th. So I left our budget meeting and went straight there. And the Cub Scout Pinewood Derby was going on when I arrived, and then the Girl Scout one started. And I just wanted to congratulate all the little girls and their parents because there were some beautiful cars there. There was so much glitter and unicorns and beautiful colored cars. So they had a really nice event, and the girls all had their cars raced. There were high school Girl Scouts who were there and still active, and they were assisting in the race, and some Cub Scouts and Eagle Scouts were there assisting. It was a very nice day run by the Girl Scouts, and I was very thankful to be a judge again. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to talk about facility fees. Patrick, we'll start the conversation with that.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had circulated to the mayor and council proposed facility fees. So the idea probably started around pavilions, because obviously our pavilions are in the most demand, especially in the summer. And so we were looking at fees for the pavilions for non-Waldwick residents and for commercial entities, which currently use the pavilion free of charge. We had also, since we're starting that conversation, wanted to talk about similar fees for the senior center, for Vets Field, and for the tennis courts. For each of those, we had proposed different rates for residents than for non-residents, where residents would pay for the pavilion, the tennis courts, and Veterans Field. A single resident wouldn't pay anything, and a Waldwick-based nonprofit wouldn't pay anything. For the senior center, there's currently a $150 fee to be used there. We had proposed a non-resident fee of $250, and then some depending on intermittent use or annual use. And then we'd also proposed fees for Veterans Field and for tennis courts for non-Waldwick-based nonprofits and all for-profits. So if the council has had an opportunity to consider those fees, I would be interested in getting feedback from you so that if you are interested, we can draft an ordinance for your consideration.
I think the last time we all talked about this is, I think all of our concern was the residents will not pay for anything. It's everybody on the outside that's coming in. They would be paying the fee. Now, I think you reached out to different organizations.
Yeah, and just one point of clarification. We do have currently a fee for residents to use the senior center. So if you are reserving the second floor of the ambulance building, let's say for a party, the fee for that is $150 currently. So we propose for that to stay, and we propose to have a non-resident fee of $250. For the Veterans Field, because that one's kind of easier. Right now, we have two groups that use Veterans Field. We have the Waldwick Soccer Association and Warriors Football Club. I know that the Waldwick Soccer Association is a nonprofit, and they operate like a Waldwick Rec program, so they wouldn't pay a fee. I spoke with Warriors Football Club, They are also a nonprofit. 97% of their participants are Waldwick residents. So they would also not pay a fee, at least as it's proposed. Or, at least my concern was, I didn't want, and I didn't think it was the interest of the council to provide free park space for organizations that, charge their members high fees, or who have, they cut 50% of the people who try out. We want to support people where anybody can go out and play. But in speaking with Warriors Football Club, they are able to keep their fees low because they don't pay for field space, and they also accept the vast majority of people who try out for them, and they have a good relationship with Waldwick Soccer Association, where any of those individuals who are not accepted onto the team have an opportunity to play with Waldwick Soccer. So that alleviated my concerns there. We can still set up a fee for that use. If you're a group who wants to come and rent it out for an afternoon under the proposed fee, you can do that for $250. That'd be Veterans Field. For the tennis courts, we from time to time get requests from tennis instructors to hold lessons on the courts. Right now, we had someone approached us a few months ago interested in reserving 2 courts at the 2 of the 4 tennis courts. So as it's set up, we have it where a Waldwick-based nonprofit could reserve 1 or 2 of those courts should they choose to. We would always strive to leave courts open for public use. And then non-Waldwick-based nonprofits and any for-profit would have to pay $50 an hour, $150 for a 4-hour period, $1,000 for intermittent use each season, and $1,500 for intermittent use each year. Now, any of these requests would still come before the mayor and council for approval. So you could make the decision that, you have a group that's coming for you and they're looking to reserve the court for, Monday to Friday in peak hours, and they want to reserve 3 of the 4 courts. And you could say that's an unrealistic request. Maybe they go down to 1 court, maybe they go down to 3 or 2 days. So you still have an opportunity to shape how these fees are applied by your approval of each individual request. But generally we want to make sure, if you are supportive of it, that we set up a fee structure that these requests can adhere to.
Anybody have any comments?
I think in general, they look good. I just have one question, one comment. So for the senior center residents, $150, I just don't even know. Is that standard? Are you getting pushback? That's pretty low, right? I mean, I'm comparing it to kids' birthday parties, and that's a fraction of,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty.
And for the people we charge, that's probably all we get, because otherwise they're nonprofit. So it's Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
Girl Scouts, Senior Club, Italian Club, right? So the only people who are really being charged are those, birthday
Yeah.
parties, retirement parties. And even those are very infrequent.
They don't have that as much as we did
Okay,
as soon as we had COVID.
Yeah.
It's really
okay,
stopped. But it was very active.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
They have a lot of the kids' parties there because you got to remember that building there, you cannot have alcohol.
Right,
That's why everybody goes in the borough.
right, okay. And for the tennis lessons, so are we talking private lessons, or are we talking big group lessons?
At least, could be anything is set up underneath this fee structure. But I know that the group that had approached us recently, they were looking to take up 2 courts, 3 days a week, and they were looking to do evenings from 3 or 3:30 till 7 o'clock. So those would be larger groups.
Okay,
But not taking, at least as it's proposed from them, not taking over the whole court. They had originally asked for 5 days, but I told them, I thought that was unrealistic, that the mayor and council wouldn't go for it. So I asked them to cut it back to 3 days a week.
okay. Yeah,
At
'cause
least
you
for
know-
their, again, not approving anything, but at least
Right.
what I thought would be a reasonable request for you to consider.
Because you know what happens, as soon as you raise the fee here, the instructor's just going to raise the fee, pass it off on to the people using it. So if it's a Waldwick resident, right, I'd hate for them to have to pay for the lesson and then pay for the court in addition. So I don't know if there's any way to look at that. If it's a Waldwick resident getting a lesson, the court fee is waived.
They're still paying.
Yeah,
They're paying the instructor, and
Yeah.
the instructor is going to just push this fee onto the
Yeah.
individual. That's
had a gentleman that did this 4 years ago, and he charged a fee, and nobody ever complained about it.
Okay.
In that instance, we had hired that instructor as an employee, and we had run the registration for the program and collected all the fees for the program, and then, again, he was paid out as an employee. So this would be a different consideration. It could work like you proposed. My frustration may be that we don't have a mechanism to ensure that they're keeping the rates.
That's
They may say, go to Waldorf because they don't charge, and I can keep the
Right.
rates the same and put
Right.
more in my pocket. But maybe we should be hopeful and
I don't want to make it more difficult. If there's a way to do it, we should look at it. Okay.
Patrick,
Wait,
oh,
Terry.
sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Sorry. As far as I have a couple comments. As far as the tennis courts go, what are there, 8 courts over there?
4.
4.
Yeah.
So there's 4 different games could be going on at once, 4 matches. All right. I would hate to see any of the tennis courts rented out for any purpose. Anytime I go by there in the nicer weather, they're always packed with our residents playing. I would hate to have it rented out and our own residents couldn't use it. In years past, people used to have to come and get a tennis badge similar to a pool badge and wear it. I don't know who enforced it. I wasn't on the council back then. But I can remember going to Borough Hall and getting a tennis badge and wearing it at the tennis courts. Could that be something we look at doing? Because now that we have it striped for pickleball, we're going to have these groups coming in there, which is fine, but I don't want it all taken up, and then our residents who want to go there with their child on a Saturday have no chance of getting a court because it's rented out or used by an organization. Just an opinion. And then I know I'm the lone person here, but you're charging to use the senior center, but everyone was up in arms for charging to use a pavilion. When are you charging to use the senior center to make up for the cleaning cost when the function's over? Because that same borough resident could go to the pavilion and pay nothing. I kind of look at the pavilion as like the pool. Everybody doesn't join the pool, but those who do join the pool pay to use the pool. I feel it's kind of the same way because the pavilion gets wear and tear. I think a minimal cost if you're going to have a organized party there. I think a reasonable fee to use that pavilion is worthy. You know, if a family wants to go there for a picnic after work, of course it's free. But if you're holding a wedding reception there, which people do, and it's free, and then our poor DPW men have to go there and clean up after this whole party and spend hours cleaning it when they could be doing something else in town instead of cleaning up after this free party. Just 2 points I make. Thank you.
Anyone else? Paul, you want this? You done?
So to Councilwoman Sherman's point, would it be possible for the tennis courts to just say that we're only going to rent out 2 tennis courts at a time and then leave 2 open for whoever wants to come by and use it?
Yeah, so that's how I had proposed it.
Okay.
It's a per court fee with a maximum of 2 courts. And again, any of these requests will come before the mayor and council, so you're going to have an opportunity. Maybe the only request I've gotten recently, they're looking to do it during the week, right? So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I think it is, or Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, depending. So you may say, all right, during the week, 2 courts is appropriate, but if someone put in a request for a weekend, you may say only 1 court or not at all, right? You'd still have that opportunity to make a consideration based on what you think the overall need would be for for, walk-on tennis.
Yeah,
Well, now you got it.
I remember that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Councilman Ritchie's example, we don't charge for a resident just to go onto the court and use it. In his instance, could he, as a resident, reserve the court for free? As long as he went and reserved the court for free. As a resident, he could reserve it for an hour, and then he could bring his coach with him. But at least he's reserving the court as a resident free.
I think once he brings his coach there, it's a different relationship. He's not a resident enjoying the courts for himself. He's paying someone for lessons. That coach is making money off of the use of that court. So it would be, at least, I believe it would be considered a commercial use. But it would be very hard to.
I don't know how you track
Yeah.
Well, but we also don't reserve court time.
We don't right now.
Right, so if they're going there to give a tennis lesson, it's if there's an available court.
It's just my feeling that if the resident wants to reserve a court, make sure that there is a court there, I'm going to reserve a court. Now, if he has a coach or not coach, but he could reserve it, for free if he wanted to make sure that there was a court there.
As it's proposed, there is not an ability for a resident to reserve a court. You could change. I mean, there are municipalities where you have to reserve courts. That hadn't been discussed, so it hadn't been something that I considered, but, you could certainly entertain that.
I mean, on a smaller scale, it's just like the soccer programs reserving a field,
Yeah.
and they don't pay for, they don't pay for it if they're nonprofit.
Yeah.
On a smaller scale, this is reserving a court just for residents.
Even when the soccer program comes to us and asks for court space, usually I put it back on them. Waldwick Soccer Association, Waldwick, and the Warriors football, go figure out your schedule, propose it to me, because we don't have either the knowledge of their operations or the capacity to regulate scheduling and who's on and who's off. And I believe that the school district does similar with those fees. So. Or with those types of uses. So, the scheduling, could it be an option? Sure. We're not set up right now to perform that function.
Has anybody called us besides this one group for the tennis court?
Recently, no, but it is a request that I get maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I'd say. Yeah, and I think just usually we get it from places where they have indoor facilities and they want to be outside in the summer because they understand that their clientele wants to be outside in the summer, right? And so that's why we get it. But, also it's not that you have to, or I'm even advocating for any fee to be set. You could just say, listen, there's only 4 courts, there's not enough to go around, we don't rent them out. That's it.
Our residents have.
And there's no tracking, like you don't use a software program to see who's using those. So it would be like an administrative issue, trying to book it for an hour as a resident.
Yeah, I think
Like,
what ends up happening is
it's not
someone.
an automated process.
Right. What ends up happening is we make the police department aware when people are reserving any facility, right? So, and then if somebody shows up and they want to use that space, and someone else is there, maybe they call the police department. They're the ones who make the determination that, yes, you have a reservation, no, you don't. If you have a reservation, you could stay. If you don't, you leave. Now, fortunately, that doesn't generally happen. I never remember it happening. But that would be the only way that we could.
Yeah. And then to Councilwoman Sherman's point, I agree with you on the pavilions at Borough Park.
Fee.
For the residents.
Yeah.
There should be, even if it's a small fee, just because the DPW does go there and do all the garbages and.
Isn't there a
There's a
cleaning?
deposit.
There's a
There's a
deposit.
deposit for
required.
cleaning.
And if you have to clean it, if they have to clean it, you take your deposit.
No.
If you
Right,
don't
but
clean
they
it, then you're.
Generally.
The deposit doesn't really go towards cleaning. It only goes, like, if you set off those confetti streamers and they're all over, if you graffiti, if you're, drawn with marker, if you break a table, then we'll keep your deposit. But for general care and maintenance, we do not keep the deposit. So, I mean, if you're considering fees, it would be easy for us and easy for the residents if you, kept it consistent with the senior center, 150 for residents, 250 for non-residents. But again, that's whatever you like.
I think, I always felt that we have to give our residents something. And the pavilion, I think it's a nice way of them having something that they don't have to worry about paying. And, you know, I've always said that. Don can even attest to that. I've always said I would not want to ever charge.
I think just another point about the difference between the pavilion and the senior center is the pavilion's outside, so they could have a party and it could get rained out, or something might happen that is not going to happen with the senior center. Senior center is guaranteed.
You want to go with this? You want to break some stuff up, or-
I do what I'm told, whatever you like.
Do you like the,
So I guess, if it's helpful, maybe we break this down into pieces and we can do straw polls. The first question would be about pavilions. Do you want to charge residents for pavilions? You want to do it this way?
yeah, that's
All
fine.
right, so,
Don, just goes that end?
No.
No charge.
No charge.
No.
If there's a charge, I wouldn't say it would be the $150 like the ambulance. I just sometimes think people treat things a little nicer when they have to make,
That's yes.
that's a yes.
Mike?
No charge.
Yes, charge.
No charge.
okay, so then I would draft an ordinance where there's no, for the pavilion, no charge to residents, no charge to Waldock-based nonprofits, $100 for non-residents, and then for non-Waldock-based nonprofits and all for-profits, $250 for each use, $700 for intermittent, $1,500 for intermittent by season, and $3,000 for intermittent by year. For the senior center, generally remains the same, where the Waldock resident is $150, Waldock-based nonprofit $0, non-residents $250 per use, non-Waldock resident, or excuse me, non-Waldock-based nonprofits and all for-profits $250 for each use, $700 for intermittent use each month, $1,500 for intermittent use each year, for each season, and $3,000 for intermittent use each year. Is everybody supportive of that generally? All right.
Say tennis courts?
No, now we're going to go to,
Not-
so that was the senior center.
That's the senior center.
We'll keep tennis courts for last. All right, Vets Field, Waldock-based not-for-profit, $0. Non-Waldock-based nonprofits and all for-profits, $250 per use, $700 for intermittent use each month, $1,500 for intermittent use each season, and $3,000 for intermittent use each year.
But there's also an age thing in there too, right?
Always by ordinance, this is a 12 and under field. So is the council supportive of that fee structure?
Yes.
Okay, so then
Yes.
the question of tennis courts, maybe we do this little by little. So obviously, are you supportive of Waldock-based nonprofits being able to reserve the court for free? I don't see a tremendous amount of people who would have this use, but you know, maybe a charity is running an event and they want to say we're going to have a tennis tournament and we want to reserve two courts. So are you supportive of it being able to be reserved by Waldock-based nonprofits for free?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And then, so the question, in general, are you in favor of non-Waldock-based nonprofits and for-profits being able to reserve the courts at all? Maybe we start
No.
there.
Yeah.
So we should, we start with,
Yeah, well, you can do the regular.
oh, well, you want to go reverse order? You want to start with Councilman Sherman?
I like going second to last.
Don,
Hey. What was the question?
So the question is, and we can, I don't want to get into the
Yes.
dollar number, but
Should we
are you in favor of charging
Yes.
or allowing non-Waldock-based nonprofits and all for-profits to reserve the courts?
Yes.
Yes, as long as they don't get to reserve all.
Yeah.
Yes, for a fee.
Yes.
Yes, max 2 at a time, and it can't be 2 groups doing 2, right? Just, okay.
We only have 4 courts? No.
So we'll go with max of 2 courts. So now you get into the dollar amount. $50 each hour, $150 for 4 hours, $1,000 for intermittent use each season, and $1,500 for intermittent use each year. I don't, in speaking with the, I had floated some numbers out, and I had a higher number pegged in here for intermittent use each season. And he was polite, he didn't try to negotiate, but he was like, I appreciate you getting back to me. That's not a number we can live with, and I'll go somewhere else. So I put it just lower than that at a place where I think is high enough where they won't walk away. Or excuse me, low enough they won't walk away, but high enough where it, keeps us whole. And we won't be overrun with requests.
Sounds good.
Yes.
No.
Okay. The good news is this is as I proposed it, so I will draft an ordinance based off of what I proposed to the mayor and council. No, listen, it's good discussion, and at least we understand the framework for how we go forward, so it's helpful. So thank you.
We saved you some time.
Yeah.
Any other new business from the council? Nope. Okay, we'll open up the public. Anybody from the public would like to comment on anything? Please come to either microphone. Please state your name and address so we have it for our record.
Al Colden, Dante Place. Before I fall asleep, I have a question.
Are we boring you?
Yes.
Wait a minute, could you hear us?
Yeah, but I can hear most of you now.
Okay, good.
yeah.
I'm glad you're happy.
You're doing a very good job.
Thank you.
With the price of eggs today going sky high, I was thinking of getting a hen and a rooster. But is that chicken ordinance still in effect,
Yes.
where it can't grow chickens?
No, you can't grow them. You can't have them.
Well, no.
If you could grow a chicken, I want to talk with you.
If I buy them chicks, they're going to grow to be bigger. So don't say that. Two? Can I have two? Okay. Thank. Oh, one other question. First of all, my wife would be glad to hear this. Where can we donate, clothes and articles to the people that just had
Earthquake?
earthquake. So far, the only place is Patterson, and until I can get my pistol permit, I'm not going over there.
Well, why don't we look at, we'll look and see if something is in Bergen County that we could just have you send.
Not in Waldwick, though.
No. But we'll look it up. We'll look up for you, and Kelly will call you, because we know where you live and we know your name.
Well, if it's in Patterson or Newark, I'm not going. I donate local around here, but I'm not going to take your life in your hands. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Janet Haskup, 98 Longview. I have a question, and it's regarding the garbage. It was said, unless I misunderstood, that there was a 40% increase in what we were paying, and we're getting less pickup times, or it's the weekends we gave up. Can somebody explain that to me? Was it going to be like 70% they were going to charge over than what we were charging, what we were being charged?
80%. It was over 80%. And that was, the cuts we made, other than bulk pickups, there's no reduction in service. So we changed zones so that we could get away from picking up on Saturdays, which is more expensive. And we were able to kind of condense some zones where instead of picking up 6 days a week, we pick up 4 days a week. Every residence is still picked up twice a week. But changing those zones and pickup days helped us reduce cost. The other thing that helped us reduce cost was bulk pickup, because bulk pickup is hard to gauge when people are going to put out a lot of items. And if the truck fills up quick and that truck has to drive from here all the way down to Fairview to dump, you can add a tremendous amount of cost. So now that's why we have bulk pickup once a month scheduled with the clerk's office. And that's been going well so far. We have had to put out some notices to people who are putting things out with their trash. That's going to be some growing pains here probably for the next few weeks, months, but I think they'll get there. The other small change was You were previously able to put out 4 containers per pickup, now you're able to put out 2. By and large, people weren't putting out 4 containers, but what it helps us do is spread the amount of trash out across the week, where if you have a big party on the weekend, you're not putting out 4 containers on Tuesday and, 1 container on Friday on your next pickup. By limiting it to 2 containers, maybe you have a big party and you got to spread that trash out between Tuesday and Friday.
Yeah.
For the same reason, it
I
helps people.
understand that.
Yeah,
My whole
yeah.
thing was, I thought we got a decrease
No.
in the money. And I'm
No.
sure I'm not the only one, because I was reading on social media, people were thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it went from an 80+% increase
Okay.
to just over 40%.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Eric reported through Dan Anthony. I'm just listening to Al about clothing donations. 2 weeks ago, everybody knows there was a big fire in the park where a young 16-year-old lost his life. The landlord was good enough to take the rest of the family to somebody's still in the hospital. But Nellie's in Wall is collecting any kind of clothing for these children. And they really, really need it. And Nellie's has done a pretty big influential in the town, so with that. And also, I know this is National Donor. So if anybody knows anybody who wants to get kidneys, heart, eyes, let me know. I'll hook them up. I can use a kidney, but that's irrelevant right now. It's a Hackensack and St. Barnabas. You're looking for as many as possible. There's 93,000 people who need kidneys right now in America. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Arlene, I know you've been waiting.
Colleen Ennis, Finance Officer, Tax Collector, Water Agent for the Borough of Waldwick. Just wanted to take the opportunity to get on my soapbox for tax. Everybody should know that the senior freeze books have been mailed, and we're starting to get people to come in with it. Everybody's concerned with budgets and tax rates and whatnot. For seniors, it's the most important program if you qualify for people to sign up for. So please spread the word to any seniors that you know, anybody that's watching. The other important thing to know is the homestead rebate is no longer in existence. The state has replaced it with the Anchor program. And the Anchor program has a little bit more flexibility in terms of the qualifications. So everybody should at least check to see whether they qualify. There's no age restriction on the Anchor program. There is, limits in terms of income, but it's a higher threshold, and you're eligible to get up to $1,500. And the difference with the Anchor program versus the homestead rebate, the town used to get the check, and we would apply it to your taxes. With the Anchor program, they're mailing the checks directly to the taxpayer. I personally think that, they'd save a lot of postage if they still sent it to me, but that's the way they've opted to do it. But again, on that program, the deadline to apply is February 28th. So, spread the word. That's something that they can call the tax office. My staff reversed on the programs, and, we'll help everybody get what they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, sir, please come to the microphone. Give us your name and address so we have it for the record.
Greg Doctor, 56 Richard Drive, Waldwick. When are we going to get clean water? We get these notices since last March saying that hopefully we were going to get it in 2022. Now the latest one says 2023 or 2024.
Our expectation now is late '23, early '24. As we get further along in the process, that number becomes a little more finite. Our delays were in permitting mostly and engineering work. And so at this point, we are waiting for our approval for funding from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. We expect to get that any day now. As soon as we get that, we'll go out to bid. And once we open bids and award a contract, we'll understand from the contractor the lead times on all the items that are required from the project. And at that point, we'll have a contracted completion date for the project.
It just seems like we're not making progress, like the goalposts just keep moving back as time goes on, and we're not really getting close to that contract and that construction being done. Oh, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? You have to come to the microphone, give us your name and address.
Hi everyone. I'm Coral Weber.
You got to look at us.
I'm
not
just
the
looking
public.
back as them as well.
You'll have to look at us, not the public.
Okay, I'm just letting you know the woman just did this the whole time she talked. It's very rude to me. Okay, anyway,
To look
hi
at-
Mayor. I'm Coral Weber. I grew up in 41 Hickory Lane, and I had a pretty nice childhood. Anyway, and now I live on 42 Zazzetti Street, rear house. Anyway, the water crisis is not being spoken about as a crisis. I noticed there's not alarm. People are like, oh, I've been drinking it all my life, and I'm like, yeah, and you have cancer. That's my alarm is they're playing it down, and that's kind of scary because it's attacking men's fertility specifically. I don't believe it's not protecting women's fertility either. Rachel Van Wickhouse died of cancer. The Danabelle son had cancer. There's a lot of cancer that's weird in this town, and between people on the streets, they're like, I think it's the water. Oh, but we can't prove it. I'm like, go to the council meeting, talk about it. Anyway, so sorry, it was a weird start the way you talked to me. I'm shaking now. I was not nervous at all, but then the way you approached me was so rude. I don't see, it's not enough to be oh, we're gonna do a bid. I'm like, no. This is a serious thing. Your bodies are being attacked. I was a bartender at Amsterdam, and I was I wouldn't give people the water. I'm I can't with good conscience give them the water. The shower, it absorbs through your skin. So even if you don't drink it, you're getting it in your body. And they're I don't know why my 6-year-old is sick. It's you're being poisoned, and it's oh, it's no big deal. I'm not blaming anyone either. I'm not gonna be here what do you do? People are ignorant. No one knew. It's happening all over the country. My cousin was Emmy nominated for she's a reporter revealing the water crisis in Newark, and that started off a nationwide water thing. I marched for water rights, indigenous rights, years ago in New York, and I was you guys are marketing this all wrong. It shouldn't be about the indigenous rights. It's about every single human being on this planet. So Waldeck Snow, go New Jersey for being the pioneers and even looking at this, but come on, why are we? No one's taking it seriously except for a few people. Mr. Doctor, his daughter right there, she's a doctor. Hello, okay, a real doctor. They know their shit. They're the good people, and we're smart. Some people are smart, but they just don't think it's that big a deal. It's a huge deal. I'm telling you guys, if you don't know, it's a big deal. Maybe you just don't know, So I would like to see more aggression of hey guys, there's a serious crisis. We're giving you a water discount. Dude, I don't know how you guys are. I have to bathe with freaking bottled water. You can't, or go to King Spa, which their water's probably contaminated too. But it's so serious. It's not being taken that seriously. It's this is I'm how is this room not filled with people outraged? This is our water. It's air, water. Anyway, God bless you. God bless you all. And any other questions with me? Or no? Cool. Do you have anything to say about that, Mayor, Mr. Thomas Giordano?
Our administrator already spoke to the gentleman about what
I did, so but that's not enough, right? Don't you agree? After hearing me speak, did you even know it was that bad? I just want to know, do you know how bad the water is? I think people just don't know. Do you know? Did you know how bad it was? I'm saying, do you drink the water in this town?
I do.
I would not do that. It attacks your fertility. I would not. Have you read through, they're playing it down. I care about you guys. I'm actually moving as soon as I can. Yeah, there's a whole thing between me and the Leonards, but I'm moving, right? I'm not even going to be here. But I care so much about this town. I really do. I'm I'm a weirdo. I grew up here and it sucks, but I care about you guys, and I'm just letting you know if the last thing I do here is let you know that it's more serious than they're making it. It is. And God bless you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mike, second by Don. All those in favor?